Ilara had once lived a life full of hope and dreams. Just like any other young woman, she was full of energy, always on the move, chasing after goals, and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. But that all changed on a day that seemed like any other, yet would become the turning point of her life. It was a crisp autumn afternoon. Ilara was out with her friends, hiking on a narrow, rocky path through the mountains. The air was fresh, and the sun shone brightly over the landscape. Ilara had always loved hiking. It was her favorite escape, her time to reflect and disconnect from the world's chaos. But that day, fate had other plans. As she walked carefully along the trail, her foot slipped on a loose rock. The next thing she knew, she was tumbling down the side of the cliff. The fall felt endless. The world spun around her, and the sound of rushing wind in her ears was deafening. She landed hard on the ground, a sharp pain shooting through her body. For a moment, everything went silent. She tried to move, but her legs refused to respond. Panic set in as she realized she couldn't feel them. Her legs were completely numb. The pain was unbearable, but worse than that was the fear. She tried to scream for help, but her voice caught in her throat. Her friends finally reached her, breathless with worry. They quickly called for an ambulance, and the minutes felt like hours as Ilara lay on the cold ground, unable to move. The ambulance ride to the hospital was a blur. Ilara's body felt numb, but her mind was racing. She tried to stay calm, telling herself that this was just an injury, that she would recover. But deep down, a fear started to creep in. She didn't know what was wrong with her, and that uncertainty ate at her. When they arrived at the hospital, the doctors rushed her into the ER. The tests were quick, but the results were devastating. The fall had shattered her spine. Her doctors explained as gently as they could that she would never walk again. The words felt like a blow to her chest, leaving her breathless. For the next few days, Ilara couldn't stop thinking about what the doctors had said. She spent her time staring out the window, watching the world go by as if it belonged to someone else. The hardest part was seeing her friends and family try to stay positive, trying to convince her that everything would be okay. But Ilara couldn't see it. Her world had shattered, and it was hard to find hope in a future she never imagined. The days turned into weeks, and Ilara was transferred to a rehabilitation center. There, she learned to live with her new reality. At first, everything was a struggle. Simple tasks like getting out of bed or eating without assistance felt impossible. Her body was no longer her own. It was frustrating, humiliating, and painful. She missed the feeling of walking, of moving freely, of feeling strong and capable. But as the months went by, Ilara learned to accept her situation. She relied on a wheelchair to get around, and while it gave her the independence she needed, it was a constant reminder of what she had lost. The world seemed smaller now, as if her life had been reduced to a single chair. The dreams she once had now seemed distant, unreachable. Still, she tried to find joy in small things. The sound of birds chirping in the morning, the feel of sunlight on her skin, the occasional laugh with friends who still visited. But no matter how hard she tried, the pain of her loss lingered, a constant ache in her heart. Ilara's world had become quiet and still. She was no longer the adventurous young woman who lived life to the fullest. She had become someone different, someone who struggled just to survive. It was a lonely existence, and though she tried to keep her spirits up, the weight of her circumstances often felt unbearable. In her darkest moments, Ilara would close her eyes and remember the woman she once was. The vibrant, free-spirited person who hiked up mountains, ran in the fields, and danced in the rain. But that person felt like a distant memory now. Like a version of herself that belonged to another life. It was on one of those long, lonely nights, when the weight of her reality felt too much to bear, that Ilara heard a name that would change everything. It was a man's name. A man who worked with technology, who specialized in advanced prosthetics. A name that, at first, didn't mean much to her. But in the quiet of the night, it sparked a small flame of curiosity. Perhaps there was still a chance. Perhaps in the world of technology, there was a way to bring her back to life. A life beyond the confines of her wheelchair. The thought seemed impossible, but something deep inside Ilara refused to give up hope. Maybe, just maybe, this man could give her a future she had thought was lost forever. And so, Ilara's journey into the unknown began. A journey that would lead her to a new hope, a new beginning, and a life she never imagined possible. She couldn't know that just yet. For now, all she had was a spark of hope, a tiny flicker that would grow into something much bigger. Ilara had spent years in a world of limitations where each day felt like a reminder of everything she couldn't do. But one afternoon, everything changed. It was a day like any other except she was attending a medical conference. With her therapist invited as part of her ongoing rehabilitation, she hadn't been particularly enthusiastic about it. But the opportunity to meet other people facing similar challenges was something her therapist encouraged. It wasn't until the conference had begun that Ilara's attention was drawn to a quiet corner of the room where a small crowd had gathered. It was there that she first heard the name Dr. Tobias Keller. Dr. Keller wasn't a typical medical professional. He wasn't a surgeon or a scientist like the others at the conference. He was an engineer, a brilliant inventor known for his work in prosthetics, but not just any prosthetics. These were prosthetics that seemed to bend the very laws of what was possible. As Ilara approached, she heard him speaking about redefining human mobility in a way no one had ever done before. His eyes sparkled with excitement, and his voice carried an unshakable confidence that piqued Ilara's curiosity. Though she was hesitant, something about him drew her in. She walked over, her wheelchair wheels quiet against the polished floor. Dr. Keller noticed her immediately. Without hesitation, he broke away from the group and walked towards her. "I've heard of you," he said, his voice calm, but with an edge of warmth. "Ilara, the woman who's been in a wheelchair for 10 years? I think we might be able to change that." Ilara was taken aback. She had never expected to meet someone who knew her story so well. "You know about me?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "I do," he smiled. "And I've been working on something that could help people like you." Before she could respond, he motioned for her to follow him to a private area. Intrigued, Ilara wheeled herself behind him, unsure of what to expect. Once they were alone, Dr. Keller turned to her and began explaining his work. His latest project wasn't just about traditional prosthetics. It was something far more advanced. A pair of robotic legs that could not only mimic the movements of real legs but surpass them in speed, agility, and power. It sounded impossible. Ilara had seen the world of prosthetics evolve in her time, but this was something entirely new. "I've designed these legs to be more than just tools to get you from one place to another," Dr. Keller said, his voice growing more passionate. "They're a step towards making the impossible possible. I believe they can help you walk again, Ilara." Ilara felt a mix of disbelief and hope. It was too good to be true. Robotic legs sounded like science fiction, yet here was a man who believed in it. His belief in his creation was contagious, and for the first time in years, Ilara felt the faintest flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. "I don't know if I can trust this," Ilara confessed, her voice low. "What if it doesn't work? What if I can't handle it?" Dr. Keller's expression softened. He kneeled down in front of her, eye level, and placed a hand on the armrest of her chair. "I won't lie to you," he said. "There will be challenges. There will be pain, frustration, and fear. But you won't be alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. And when you take that first step again, I promise you, it will be worth everything you've endured." Ilara's heart raced. The idea of walking again, of standing on her own 2 feet, seemed impossible, but the passion in Dr. Keller's eyes made her want to believe in it. For the first time in a long while, she saw a future beyond the wheelchair. "I'm not promising miracles," Dr. Keller continued, standing up and offering his hand. "But I am promising a chance. For you to live a life you thought was lost. Do you want to take it?" Ilara hesitated. It was terrifying. The idea of stepping into the unknown, of trusting someone she had just met with something as personal as her body, felt overwhelming. But then she thought of her life, the limitations, the frustration, the small victories that were never enough. She had spent years resigned to her situation, but the thought of something more, something better, tugged at her heart. Slowly, she extended her hand and shook his. "I'll take that chance." Dr. Keller smiled, a mix of relief and excitement in his eyes. "Then let's make history." Ilara wasn't sure what the future would hold, but as they shook hands, she felt something she hadn't in years, a flicker of anticipation. Perhaps for the first time in a long while, she was on the verge of something greater than herself, something beyond the confines of her wheelchair, beyond what anyone had ever imagined. And with that handshake, her journey into the unknown began, a journey that would take her from hopelessness to the possibility of a new life, one step at a time. The days following her meeting with Dr. Keller felt surreal. Lara couldn't quite grasp the enormity of what had just happened. A human engineer, a stranger, had offered her a chance to walk again. She spent hours turning the idea over in her mind, contemplating every possibility. But with each passing day, the flicker of hope inside her grew brighter. She had almost convinced herself it was all just a dream, something too good to be true. But then one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the shadows grew long, Lara received a message from Dr. Keller. The words on her screen were simple: "Meet me tomorrow. I have something to show you." That one sentence, so unassuming, felt like a spark ready to ignite her entire world. The next morning, Ilara found herself standing at the doorstep of Dr. Keller's workshop. The air smelled of metal and technology, the scent of innovation and possibility. She wheeled herself inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The workshop was vast, filled with computers, blueprints, and strange mechanical parts. But there, in the center of the room, was something that caught her eye immediately. A pair of sleek metallic legs. They were unlike anything she had ever seen, elegant, yet powerful. They were not prosthetics in the traditional sense. These were something entirely new, a fusion of advanced robotics and human movement. They shimmered in the light, their smooth surface reflecting the promise of something greater. Dr. Keller, who had been working nearby, noticed her gaze and smiled. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with excitement. Ilara was speechless. She had seen prosthetics before, but these were different. These were ... alive. They looked like they were made to move, to dance, to run. They didn't just belong to the future, they belonged to her. She could find the courage to believe in them. "They're incredible," she said, her voice trembling. "But ... are they real? Can they really help me walk again?" Dr. Keller walked over to the legs and gently placed his hand on the surface. "They can," he said with quiet confidence. "These legs aren't just tools, they're an extension of you. I've designed them to respond to your thoughts, to move as you move. They will adapt to you, Ilara, not the other way around." Ilara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The thought of walking again, really walking, was almost overwhelming. But what struck her most was the realization that this was no longer a mere dream. It was a possibility. She could feel the weight of the decision ahead of her, the enormity of what it meant. If she said yes, there was no going back. Dr. Keller watched her carefully, as though he could see the battle playing out in her mind. He didn't rush her, but waited patiently, giving her the space she needed to think. Finally, Ilara spoke, her voice small but steady. "What's the catch?" "Why me?" she asked, her eyes locking onto his. "Why did you pick me?" Dr. Keller's expression softened, and he took a step closer. "I didn't pick you," he said, his voice calm yet earnest. "You picked me. You were the one who came to me, who gave me the chance to show you what could be. The real question, Ilara, is whether you're ready to take the first step. You're the only one who can decide if this is worth it." Lara stared at the robotic legs in front of her, her thoughts racing. Could she trust him? Could she trust this technology? She had spent so long in her wheelchair, and the thought of standing up again, of being able to walk, was both exhilarating and terrifying. But there was something inside her that refused to give up. She had spent 10 years believing that her life was over, that the woman she used to be was lost. But maybe this was the moment she could change everything. "Tell me what I need to do," she said finally, her voice clear and strong. "I'm ready." Dr. Keller smiled, a look of relief and admiration crossing his face. It's not going to be easy. There'll be pain, frustration, and a lot of setbacks. But I promise you, every moment of struggle will be worth it. Not just giving you legs, Alara. I'm giving you the chance to live again, to move, to run, to dance. This is your second chance. Alara felt a mix of emotions swirl inside her. There was fear, yes, but also a rush of excitement, of possibility. For the first time in years, she felt like she had control over her life. The future didn't seem so distant anymore. It was right there, within reach, if she was willing to take the leap. "Let's do it," she said, her voice firm with determination. And so, just like that, Alara took the first step into a new world, a world where she could stand tall, walk freely, and reclaim the life she had once thought was lost forever. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be moments of doubt. But she was no longer the woman who had given up. She was someone new, someone ready to fight for her future. Dr. Keller nodded, his face alight with pride. "Then let's get started." Alara could hardly sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the robotic legs. They weren't just an idea anymore. They were a part of her future, something real, something tangible. The feeling of excitement mixed with anxiety twisted in her stomach. Was she really ready for this? Could she handle the change? The next morning, she arrived at Dr. Keller's lab early, her mind still racing with questions. The lab was even more impressive than she remembered, filled with rows of sleek machinery and complex tools. But the one thing that stood out was the pair of robotic legs, now waiting for her, resting on a platform under a bright spotlight. They looked more magnificent than she had ever imagined, perfectly crafted. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. Dr. Keller greeted her with a calm smile, but Alara could sense his own excitement behind it. "Today's the first step," he said, motioning toward the legs. "Are you ready?" Lara nodded, though her palms were sweaty and her heart was pounding. She had spent so many years stuck in a wheelchair, relying on others for everything. Now, she was about to trust a machine and invention that seemed too perfect to be true. What if it didn't work? What if she couldn't adapt to it? "Take a seat," Dr. Keller instructed gently. "We'll begin by fitting you with the initial harness. It's the first step in adjusting the legs to your movements." She wheeled herself closer to the platform, her heart thumping in her chest. Slowly, she moved into position and allowed Dr. Keller to begin the process of fitting her with the robotic legs. She could feel the cold metal against her skin, the weight of the technology, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. Felt almost alive. Dr. Keller explained each step as he worked. The robotic legs were equipped with sensors that would read her body movements and adjust accordingly. They weren't just prosthetics. They were designed to learn from her, adapt to her needs, and provide a level of mobility that was far beyond anything she had ever experienced. Alara listened carefully, though a part of her was still trying to comprehend the scale of what she was about to do. Once the harness was in place, Dr. Keller powered up the legs. A soft hum filled the room, and Alara's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what to expect, but when she shifted her weight, she felt a strange, almost surreal sensation, a slight pull, as if the legs were responding to her movements. "Let's take it slow," Dr. Keller said. "Start by shifting your weight forward." Alara followed his instructions, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of movement that wasn't dependent on her wheelchair. The legs adjusted, following her lead. It was like learning to walk all over again, but this time, she wasn't dependent on her own legs. The robotic legs were there, supporting her, moving with her. She took a deep breath and shifted her weight further, letting the legs guide her. It was strange at first. The feeling was alien. Her legs, though powered by technology, still felt like they were part of her. Every movement was calculated, precise, but unfamiliar. She had to focus deeply, guiding the machine with each slight shift of her weight. The first step was awkward, tentative, but the second one felt stronger. She moved again. Then again. Each step was more stable than the last, as if the legs were learning, adjusting to her body. Her heart raced, and a grin slowly spread across her face. She was walking again. "Alara, "You're doing great, Dr. Keller," encouraged from behind her. "Just take it one step at a time." But for Alara, that single step felt like the beginning of everything. Each motion felt like a victory, a tiny breakthrough. It wasn't easy, not by any means. Her muscles screamed from the unfamiliar strain, and the weight of the robotic legs felt strange. But with each step, it became clearer she was doing it. She was walking. The room seemed to fade away as she focused on the movement, feeling the power of the robotic legs supporting her. The initial shock of stepping away from her wheelchair was overwhelming, but the joy of independence was even stronger. She felt a surge of gratitude for Dr. Keller, for his belief in her, and for this incredible technology that was giving her a chance at life again. As she took a few more steps, she realized something: this was just the beginning. She wasn't simply going to walk again. She was going to reclaim her life. The process wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks. The pain would be a constant companion. But there was no going back now. This was her new reality, and she was ready to face it, head dash on. Dr. Keller watched her, a look of quiet pride in his eyes. "You're doing amazing, Alara. We're just getting started." Alara nodded, wiping a bead of sweat from her forehead. The future felt uncertain, but for the first time in years, it felt full of possibility. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional, mental, spiritual. She wasn't just rebuilding her body, she was rebuilding herself. And with every step she took, she was one step closer to the woman she used to be and the woman she was becoming. The journey had only just begun. The weeks that followed felt like a whirlwind. Lara's body was learning at an astonishing rate, but the path wasn't smooth. Every day brought new challenges, new frustrations, and new victories. But through it all, Alara's resolve never wavered. Each step she took was a testament to her strength, her will, and her determination to move forward. At first, she could barely make it across the room without feeling exhausted. The robotic legs responded to her movements, yes, but they weren't flawless. She had to constantly adjust her balance, find her rhythm, and fight against the fatigue that settled in her muscles. There were days when she wanted to give up, to slide back into the comfort of her wheelchair, where things were predictable, safe. But each time that thought crossed her mind, she reminded herself of why she was doing this. She wasn't just learning to walk again, she was learning to live again. Dr. Keller remained by her side every step of the way, tweaking the design, adjusting the settings, and offering words of encouragement. The robotic legs were becoming more attuned to her, more responsive to her needs. But the real breakthrough came one afternoon, after hours of practice and frustration. Alara had been pushing herself that day, determined to move faster, to take bigger strides. Her goal wasn't just to walk, it was to run. She wasn't going to let this chance slip away. Today felt like the day she could finally break through. "Remember, it's about control," Dr. Keller said, as Alara shifted her weight forward. "You control them, not the other way around." She nodded, focusing on every movement. The robotic legs had adapted to her body's rhythm, but today, she pushed them beyond what they had ever done before. She took a step, then another, and as her confidence grew, so did her speed. She moved faster, her heart racing in time with her steps. The room seemed to blur around her. With each stride, Alara could feel the wind on her face. The familiar sensation of freedom rushing back. It was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when everything clicked into place. Then, something extraordinary happened. Alara found herself really running for the first time in 10 years. Her feet lifted off the ground, her legs moving in perfect synchronization with her thoughts. It wasn't clumsy or artificial. Natural. The robotic legs weren't just responding to her body, they were anticipating her movements, becoming an extension of her own will. She was flying in a way. Her legs propelled her forward with such ease, she felt like she could keep going forever. Her laughter filled the room as she pushed harder, faster. Tears welled up in her eyes, not from pain but from pure joy. She had done it. She was running. Something she thought was impossible. Something she had dreamed about in the quiet of her dark moments was now a reality. Dr. Keller stood by, watching with a look of awe. "I knew you could do it," he said, his voice full of pride. "You've just unlocked the full potential of the legs. They're responding perfectly to you now." Ilara slowed down, her breath heavy but exhilarated. She had done it. She had taken that leap, the one that felt impossible just weeks ago. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. And it was more than just her body moving. It was the freedom to exist on her own terms again. For the first time, Ilara realized the true power of what had happened. These weren't just robotic legs. They were a symbol of everything she had overcome. Every painful step, every moment of doubt had led to this, a breakthrough that would change her life forever. As she took a deep breath, still reeling from the sensation of running, she looked up at Dr. Keller, her eyes sparkling. "What's next?" Dr. Keller smiled, his eyes filled with a mix of pride and excitement. "Next, we go further. We make you faster, stronger, more unstoppable than you ever thought possible." Ilara felt a sense of peace wash over her. The journey was far from over, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She was in control, and the world was wide open before her. Every obstacle that once seemed insurmountable now felt like a challenge to be conquered. The breakthrough wasn't just physical. It was a mental and emotional awakening. She wasn't just walking again, she was moving forward. She was becoming someone new, someone capable of more than she had ever imagined, and this was only the beginning. Ilara's breakthrough didn't just change her life, it threw her into the center of a storm. What had once been a solitary journey, one of personal growth and overcoming limitations, suddenly became something bigger. It wasn't just about walking again. Now, it was about the world watching her, scrutinizing her every move. The first few days after her incredible run were filled with exhilaration. Away! She practiced every chance she got, pushing her robotic legs to their limits. Stronger, faster, and more capable. But as word of her progress spread, something unexpected started to happen. People began to treat her differently. They didn't see her as the woman who had fought to walk again. They saw her as something else. It started with the media. News outlets picked up her story, labeling her as the first woman to walk with robotic legs and heralding Dr. Keller as a revolutionary genius. At first, Ilara basked in the attention. She'd never been the center of such admiration. The media loved her, portrayed her as an inspiring figure, someone who had defied the odds and triumphed over adversity. The world seemed to open up to her, offering her opportunities she had never imagined. But it didn't take long for the darker side of this newfound fame to show itself. As the days went by, Ilara began to notice a shift in the way people looked at her. Whispers followed her in the streets. Some admired her, but many looked at her with skepticism. The very thing that had given her freedom, her robotic legs, was now the thing that set her apart, made her an outsider. The more Ilara walked, the more she realized that people didn't know how to react to her. She wasn't just a woman who had overcome an injury. She was something different. Some called her a miracle, others called her a monster. It wasn't just the public. Dr. Keller began to face questions from his colleagues and peers. Was what he had done ethical? Was it right to alter someone's body so drastically, even if it gave them the chance to walk again? More and more, Ilara and Dr. Keller found themselves under scrutiny. Not just from the media, but from the very community that should have been supporting them. Ilara's doubt began to grow. She had never considered the ethical implications of her transformation. She had been so focused on reclaiming her life that she hadn't thought about how it might change the way the world saw her. Could she still be human if she was walking on robotic legs? Would she always be seen as an experiment, a spectacle, something in between? One evening, she sat alone in the park, her robotic legs resting on the ground as she watched the sunset. The park was quiet, but her mind was anything but. She had always prided herself on her independence, on her ability to face challenges head-on. But now it felt like she was living in the shadow of a machine, unable to fully shake the feeling that she wasn't truly herself anymore. Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind her. "You don't look like you're enjoying your newfound fame," Dr. Keller said, sitting down beside her. Ilara looked at him, a mix of frustration and confusion in her eyes. "How can I? People don't see me, they see the legs. They don't see the woman who's fought to get here. They see an experiment. A machine. And it's not just the world, it's me too. I don't even know who I am anymore. Dr. Keller sighed, looking out at the horizon. I didn't think it would be easy, Alara. This is a big change, not just for you, but for everyone who sees you. People don't understand what we've done here. They're scared, they're curious, and sometimes they just don't know what to make of it. But you are still the same person you've always been. The legs don't define you, you define them. Alara's gaze softened, but the doubt didn't go away. She didn't know how to explain the way she felt. It wasn't just about the way others saw her, it was about the way she saw herself. She had to come to terms with something she had never considered before. The transformation had affected her in ways she hadn't anticipated. I don't know if I can handle all of this, Alara admitted. The pressure, the judgment. What? If I'm not the person I used to be? Dr. Keller turned to her, his eyes full of understanding. Alara, you're not supposed to be the person you were. You're evolving, just like the rest of us. This is your chance to become something more, but you have to own it. All of it, the good, the bad, and the difficult. His words settled in her mind, but the weight of the conflict still lingered. She wasn't just struggling with the opinions of others, she was struggling with herself. Was she still human? Could she ever be the same again? And if she wasn't, what did that mean for her future? The next few days were filled with more questions than answers. Alara began to isolate herself more, avoiding the media and public appearances. She couldn't shake the feeling that the world expected her to be a hero, but all she felt was confusion. The pressure to live up to everyone's expectations weighed heavily on her. Dr. Keller reached out again, but this time, Alara was unsure how to answer him. He had given her the chance to walk, to run, to live again, but could she handle the responsibility that came with it? The conflict wasn't just external, it was internal. The question of who she was, what she was becoming, and whether she could ever find peace in her new reality loomed over her like a shadow. For the first time since the accident, Alara didn't have the answers. But she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just the woman in a wheelchair. She was someone different, someone who would have to figure out how to live in this new world, one step at a time. The days that followed were not easy. Lara had felt the weight of her transformation, not just physically, but emotionally. He had walked through pain, doubt, and fear, but now as the world seemed to press against her, she realized that the only way to truly move forward was to find peace within herself. She wasn't just walking again, she was learning how to live again. That meant facing the truth of who she had become, both the parts she loved and the parts that scared her. It was early morning when Alara decided to take a walk in the park. The air was crisp, the sun just beginning to rise, casting long shadows and painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. She had always loved mornings, the quiet, the stillness, the way the world seemed full of promise. Today, she needed that promise more than ever. Her robotic legs clicked softly against the pavement as she walked, the familiar sound now a source of comfort rather than uncertainty. She had become accustomed to the rhythm, to the feeling of the legs moving with her. It was no longer alien, it was part of her. Yet despite the comfort, there was still a lingering sense of displacement. It wasn't just the way the world saw her it was the way she saw herself. As she strolled, her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to find Dr. Keller approaching, his expression thoughtful but kind. He had been with her every step of the way, literally and figuratively. He could see the inner conflict still simmering beneath her calm exterior. I figured you might need some space, Dr. Keller said, stopping beside her. But I also know you've been avoiding the question, so I'll ask it. How are you really doing? Alara hesitated, looking down at her legs, at the metal that had become both her strength and her symbol of uncertainty. She had wanted to find the right words, the ones that would make sense of everything. But the truth was, she wasn't sure she had them yet. I don't know if I'll ever be the same, she said, her voice soft but steady. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I don't have to be. I've spent so long trying to figure out who I am, but I think maybe I don't need to know all the answers right now. Maybe the answers will come when I'm ready. Dr. Keller smiled, his eyes reflecting the pride he felt for her. That's a pretty powerful realization, Alara. The answers come when you stop searching for them so desperately. You've already come so far, not just with your legs, but with yourself. You're not the same as before, but who you are now is something even more incredible. Alara looked out over the park, watching the people around her, many of them oblivious to the journey she had been through. The world hadn't changed, was still full of noise, judgment, and expectation. But for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had the power to shape it, to move through it on her own terms. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about owning it. Everything, she said. Her eyes focused ahead. And you're right. I can't keep running from it. I can't keep hiding behind the question of whether I'm human or not.
No!
I'm human, and I'm something else now, too. I'm both. I'm someone who's learned to walk again, not just with these legs, but with my heart, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. For the first time, Alara felt no fear in her words. She had come to terms with what she had become, not just a person who had overcome a disability, but a person who had embraced something greater than herself. The robotic legs weren't just a tool, they were a part of her now, a reminder of her resilience, her strength, and her ability to evolve. You are Alara, Dr. Keller said quietly, and that's the most human thing of all. They stood there for a moment, the silence between them comfortable, filled with understanding. The world wasn't going to stop judging, and Alara knew there would always be people who saw her as something less, something other, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was how she saw herself. As she continued her walk through the park, her steps felt lighter, the weight on her shoulders easing. She wasn't carrying the burden of who she used to be, or the fear of what others might think. She was walking forward, one step at a time, into a new life, her life. The future was no longer a distant dream. It was here, in every stride she took, in every moment of clarity she had. She wasn't just living in the shadows of her past anymore. She was creating her future. The world was full of unknowns, but Alara knew one thing for sure. She was ready to face it all, head on. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like something was missing. She felt complete. She felt whole. She was more than just a woman in a wheelchair. She was a woman of possibility, a woman who had learned to walk, run, and live again. And nothing, not even the world's judgment, could take that away from her. The sun was fully risen now, casting its warm light over everything. Alara took a deep breath and smiled, knowing that this new dawn was hers to embrace. Ask ChatGPT,